עוד דבר אחד, שירותים. רונה. יש לנו שירותים במועדון, 2. יש לנו שירותים מול הבניין, בבניין שנמצאת הקבלה, החדר האחרון לשירותים ציבוריים. יש כאן שירותים אחד, שלא להשתמש פה בזמן השיעורים או המדיטציות, רק בהפסקות. אז מי שבכלל אנחנו מבקשים לא לצאת בזמן השיעור, השיעורים הם לא ארוכים, אז אנא נצלו את ההפסקה כדי ללכת לשירותים. מי שצריך, צריך, לא לסבול. אבל תשתדלו לעשות את זה כדי שלא יהיו יציאות וכניסות בזמן השיעור. אז יש שירותים אחד פה, רק לזמן שאין שיעור. יש אחד ממול, יש במועדון 2 ויש בחדרים כמובן. עוד שאלות? לא. Thank you. Is it alright to turn on one of them?
As you like. As you like.
As you like, if you can.
Things will start in a few seconds.
Maybe.
Let's see.
Okay.
No?
Sorry? Yeah. I'll get that. Maybe tomorrow morning. Success.
Sorry.
So good evening everyone, and welcome to this 4-day Lamb Rim retreat. And probably I've already been introduced, have I? Or do I have to introduce myself?
No, I've introduced you.
Okay, good. Makes it easy. Anyway, my name's Glen Svensson, those of you who don't know me. Maybe I thought what we'd start with is just to run through the schedule again. Maybe, I don't know if you've done that already, but just to have that clear in our mind. So this evening I plan to do about 1 hour session, and then we'll finish for this evening. Then for the next 2 days we have the same schedule. We'll have wake up at 6:15. Is there some sort of wake up gong or anything, or people just have to...
No, someone will knock on our doors and wake us.
Oh, okay, there we go, good. So 6:15, wake up. Then from 6:45 till 7:30, we'll be doing meditation in here. And that meditation session will be actually doing like 2 20-minute meditations with a little sort of 2-minute break in the middle. And the topic for that I'll talk about a little bit later this evening. Then breakfast will be 7:30 till 9 o'clock. And then in the morning we're going to have 2 sessions. First session from 9 till 10:15. Then we'll have a little 30-minute morning tea break, 10:15 to 10:45. Second session will be 10:45 until 12. Then it's time for lunch. Lunch will be from 12 till 2. And then in the afternoon we'll have 3 sessions. The first one from 2 till 3, half an hour tea break, 3:30 till 4:45, the second session in the afternoon, another little tea break, and then we'll be doing another session from 5:15 until 6. That's going to be another meditation session. So again, 45 minutes, 2 20-minute meditations with a 2-minute break in the middle. Then dinner will be at 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the evening we'll be doing the last session. That will be a little bit of sort of summarising for the day, and then we'll finish with a sort of 20-minute meditation in the evening. So we're finishing at 8 o'clock. So that's the schedule for the next 2 days. And then on Saturday, the last day, we'll have the same schedule in the morning. So wake up, 6:15, 6:45 till 7:30 meditation, breakfast till 9, 2 sessions in the morning the same, 9 till 10:15, break, 10:45 till 12, second session. Lunch will be on Saturday 12 till 1:30, so 1.5 hours. And then from about 1:30 till about 3, Dharma friends will be giving a sort of a wrap-up session there. We'll have a short tea break, and then I'll finish off my last session giving some last meditation and then some advice and guidance. And in the schedule, we're scheduled to finish at 5 o'clock, but we may actually finish a little bit earlier depending on how quickly we go through the material in the afternoon. So at latest 5 o'clock we'll be finished. So that's the schedule for the next 4 days. As you can see, what we're going to be doing in this retreat is theory and practice. So I'll be explaining a lot of the framework for practice, and then we'll be doing a fair amount of meditation as well, so integrating that together. Now maybe just to help me a little bit to understand at what level you're at, so who sort of has some basic, at least general understanding of Buddhism in general? Who doesn't have even sort of any basic understanding? Okay, good. And those of you who have some understanding, how many of you have any understanding of the framework we're going to be following here, the Lam Rim? So how many of you have any sort of understanding of that? Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to assume we have no understanding of anything. So if you have no understanding of anything, very good. You're not going to be left behind. So I'm going to sort of start from the beginning and sort of build up on that. And what I'm planning to do over the coming days is, particularly tomorrow, what I'd like to do is build like a general framework starting from the beginning, starting from the very first teaching the Buddha gave, the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths is sort of the framework for all Buddhist traditions, the foundation of all Buddhist traditions. So we'll start with that tomorrow. And then later tomorrow, we're going to build on the Four Noble Truths framework and see how the various sort of traditions build on that. First, we'll look at what's called the Theravada traditions of Buddhism. That includes like Sri Lankan Buddhism, Burmese, Thai, Southeast Asian Buddhist traditions. And then on that, we'll look at how what's called the Mahayana traditions, how they build on top of that framework. Mahayana traditions, of course, include Zen, Korean, Chinese, and Tibetan Buddhism. And then lastly, tomorrow we'll look at how then what's called Vajrayana or Tantra level of practice builds on top of that as well. So then by the end of tomorrow, we'll have some very general framework of the whole of Buddhism in a very general way. And then what we're going to do on Friday and Saturday is we're going to be following the Lam Rim. Lam Rim is a Tibetan word. Lam means path and Rim means stages. So Lam Rim means stages of the path. And it's the framework that we use within the Geluk school of Tibetan Buddhism. In Tibetan Buddhism there are 4 schools. Geluk school is one of those. That's the school that the Dalai Lama himself belongs to. And we're going to be looking at the Lam Rim framework, how the whole stages of the path are set out in a very structured way. So we're going to go through that, focusing on the sort of the most important topics within the Lamb Rim. So that's what we're going to follow then on Friday and Saturday. So that's sort of the framework that we're going to be using. Within this retreat, I don't know if it's been mentioned already about silence, but for the next 2 days, that is for Thursday, Friday, we're going to be practicing silence. In that way, we can get the most out of this retreat by not dispersing our energy, a lot of chit-chat here and there. So we're going to be actually starting the silence tomorrow morning. So first thing when you wake up, you're already in silence, because maybe some of you still have to arrange some things this evening and so forth. So it's okay to, even after this session, to have a bit of a chat and get yourself organised. But then tomorrow morning when you wake up, we're in silence mode, right through until Saturday morning after the morning meditation before breakfast. Then from then on, the rest of Saturday we'll be moving out of silence mode. There was something else I wanted to mention on that. Oh, of course it's not going to be 100% silence, because in my classes I like to be very interactive. So if you have any time questions in the class, then please ask questions, because that will help with the material. So in the class it's okay to ask questions and so forth, but then outside of that, then we'll maintain that silence. And I think if you do that, you're going to get really the most out of these 4-day retreat. Now, how to approach this retreat is, as I always recommend in these sort of events, is to have a very relaxed approach. To be really nice and relaxed, not to have too many unrealistic expectations. Some of the material that we'll be covering may be not so easy to understand. So if we have the expectation that, you know, we'll be able to understand everything very easily, then maybe we're going to get a little bit frustrated. So some of these topics, of course, you'll need to hear about and read about and think about many times before we get a good understanding of the topic. So then to just have the attitude of picking up as much as you can in this retreat. What you don't understand, next time you hear about it, you'll understand a little bit more. And then just be happy with whatever you manage to pick up in this retreat. I think that's going to be the best approach. Now, often when we talk about, in Buddhism, we talk about developing wisdom. So often we talk about developing 3 types of wisdom. The first wisdom is called the wisdom from hearing. And of course that's when you listen to someone giving an explanation and you pick up some understanding from merely listening to the explanation. With this, what I'd like to recommend is that if there is something I'm explaining that you really don't understand, or maybe you didn't even understand the words because of my accent, then please ask questions. So I very much encourage questions. 2 things that I'd like to recommend about asking questions. First is don't just ask the question, put your hand up. And then often what I'll do is I'll acknowledge that you want to ask a question, and I may continue to finish the point, and then I'll get you to ask your question. And the second point with asking questions is keep your question to the topic we're currently discussing. Because of course there are many interesting questions in Buddhism, and then often if we ask questions about other things, my answer is going to be, that's coming, that's coming, that's coming. So keep the question to the topic, otherwise we get easily sidetracked. So that is about the wisdom of hearing. The second type of wisdom we're cultivating is called the wisdom arisen from contemplation. As the name suggests, that is when we think about the topic and try to understand it. So here we can have a piece of advice, and this comes directly from the Buddha himself. And he said, please don't accept what I tell you merely out of devotion to me. Rather, you need to be like a goldsmith who checks and tests the quality of the gold before accepting it. So I'd like to offer the same advice to you. No matter what I say, don't accept it merely on face value. It won't help you. You need to think about all the things that I say and investigate and check and see whether it makes sense, whether it matches your experience. And only after you've thoroughly thought about things and it sounds like accurate, then you can accept it. Don't just blindly accept anything, because it won't help. Also with the contemplation here, modern studies have shown is that if we don't review or think about the things that we hear within 24 hours of hearing them, we forget 75% of everything we hear. So we're going to try to avoid that in this retreat by being very interactive in asking questions. And also I'll be doing from time to time throughout the retreat, reviewing things that we've covered in the last couple of sessions to keep it fresh in our mind. Now with these two types of wisdom, we can get a good intellectual understanding. And generally this is the approach we use in our schooling days, you know, or school or university. We go and we listen to the teacher or go to the lectures, and then often we think about the material they've presented, particularly if we have to sort of pass some sort of exam. We do a lot of this study and contemplation of the material and gain a good intellectual understanding of the material. Now here, of course, in Buddhism, the goal is not to merely to have a good understanding of Buddhist philosophy, but the goal, of course, is to use this understanding to transform our mind, to transform our life. So, therefore, we need a third wisdom to do that. And that is the wisdom from meditation. So in meditation, what we're doing is we're bringing our intellectual understanding into experience. Because intellectual understanding itself is not going to dramatically change our life. We need to bring that into experience, and the best way to do that is through meditation. So we're going to be not only working on these in terms of the classes, but of course we're going to be cultivating the wisdom from meditation in our meditation sessions as well. So these are the three wisdoms that we are cultivating in Buddhism in general. And of course here we're going to be doing all three of those in this retreat. Now what I'd like to do this evening is just give a little brief introduction into this, and then we'll start the actual teachings tomorrow morning. So, as I've already mentioned in the teaching side of things, the framework we're going to begin with tomorrow is the Four Noble Truths, and then build on top of that and give a sort of overall general framework tomorrow, and then Friday, Saturday use the Lam Rim framework for the teachings. So what I'd like to do now is just talk a little bit about meditation. And this word meditation actually in Sanskrit and the original Buddhist teachings from more than 2,000 years ago were initially spread through two ancient languages, Pali and Sanskrit. And when it spread through the Pali language, it spread into those countries that are now part of what's called the Theravada tradition. So this is Sri Lankan, Burmese, Thai, most of the Southeast Asian countries. these Theravada traditions, as they're called now, have as their basis the Pali, the texts written in the Pali language, whereas the Mahayana traditions now, which is including Chinese, Zen, Korean, Tibetan Buddhism, those traditions spread through the Sanskrit language. So often in these couple of days, I'm going to be going back to the original Sanskrit word. And the reason being is that often these original Sanskrit terms, of course, had a very precise meaning. And often there's no word in English that has the same precise meaning. So often then the translator's forced to pick a word that sort of is similar, but sometimes unfortunately that English word has other meanings. And then when you hear that English word, then you actually get not a very accurate understanding of what the actual original term was. So I always like to go back to the Sanskrit term and really describe clearly what that means, so that when you hear the English word, then you'll know what we're talking about. So here, what's translated as meditation, the original word is bhavana in Sanskrit. And bhavana literally means to cultivate or to familiarize. So meditation is the process or act of cultivating or familiarizing ourselves. And so here, of course, we're talking about cultivating positive qualities, cultivating insight, and familiarizing ourselves with that. So really here, what we're talking about is transforming our mind. Now, in terms of meditation, there are many, many types of meditation. And there are many ways of categorizing meditation into groups. One way, and the way we're going to be using in this retreat, is you can categorize all meditations into two groups. The first type of meditation is called stabilizing meditation. And as the name suggests, the goal of this type of meditation is simply to stabilize our mind, to develop a calm, clear, and focused mind. And then on the basis of developing a stable or a calm, clear, focused mind, then we can use that to actually transform our mind. And we do that through the other type of meditation, which is analytical. And as the name suggests, analytical is to analyze, to investigate. And in analytical meditation, of course, there's a huge range of different types of analytical meditations. Within that, there are two main areas of practice. Wisdom and compassion. This is often likened to the two wings of a bird. You know, the bird needs two wings to fly somewhere. For us to move along the spiritual path, we need both wings of wisdom and compassion. Or very simply, we need to cultivate our head and our heart. Now, within this, then often this stabilizing meditation, again to develop a stable mind, develop a calm, clear and focused mind, it really means we're developing our concentration skills, our attention skills. And in Buddhism, there are many levels of concentration we can develop. But the minimum level of concentration we're trying to develop here in Sanskrit is called shamatha. And this can be broken into two. Shama means like non-discursive or calm. Ta means to remain or abide. So shamatha is often translated into English as calm abiding. So this is a level of concentration we're trying to develop in this stabilizing meditation. So often this type of meditation in Buddhism is simply called shamatha practice, because this is the level of concentration we're trying to develop. Shamatha. Wisdom in Sanskrit is prajna. But sometimes this wisdom practice goes by a slightly different name, vipassana. Again, vipassana is Sanskrit. Probably most of you are more familiar with the Pali word vipassana. So in both vipassana and vipassana, the VI part here of the word means higher or superior. Passana or passana means to see. So vipassana or vipassana practice means higher seeing, seeing beyond. And often this is translated into English as insight or special insight. And so this wisdom practice or vipassana practice is about gaining insight. Insight into reality. Because the Buddhist assertion is that the reason that we suffer is that we have a distorted view of reality. So to overcome our mental afflictions and suffering, we need to gain insight into the nature of reality. So this is vipassana or vipassana practice. And then compassion, this wing of practice, covers developing a number of positive qualities, such as loving kindness and compassion, equanimity, patience, empathetic joy, and so forth. So these are the two main areas of analytical meditation that we are cultivating on the basis of stabilizing our mind. Does anyone have any questions about that? Yeah.
Can you repeat again what is that? Shamatha?
Yeah. Shama means like non-discursive or calm. Ta means to remain or abide. Abide, to abide somewhere, to remain somewhere, to stay. So often shamatha is translated into English as calm abiding. So to abide means to stay, to remain. What we're doing, of course, is with a calm mind, we're remaining on the object. We're not becoming distracted. So this is really developing single-pointed concentration. Any other questions about this?
May I just mention that in Hebrew the name is Yehiam b'shalva, calm abiding. Yehiam b'shalva.
What I'd like to do now then, since what we're going to be doing in the meditations, we're meditating a meditation session before breakfast. We're also actually in the first teaching session after breakfast, we're going to start with the short meditation. Then we're going to do another full meditation session in the afternoon before dinner, and again in the evening as last thing. So the morning meditation before breakfast, we're going to be working on this, just to stabilize our mind. And then in the afternoon and the evening sessions, we're going to be doing these type of meditations. So that's afternoon, evening, and this is going to be morning. So since we're going to start this first thing tomorrow morning, what I'd like to do briefly now is briefly introduce this practice so we have a little bit of an understanding when we launch into that first thing tomorrow morning. So remember, shamatha practice is the stabilizing meditation, to stabilize our mind, to develop a calm, clear and focused mind, to develop our attention skills. Now generally in this practice there are two qualities we're trying to cultivate. the first quality we're trying to develop is stability, as the name suggests, to develop a stable mind. The fault here that we're trying to overcome, of course, is distraction. But not only do we want a stable mind, meaning to be able to focus on a given object without becoming distracted, we also want to be able to focus in a very clear way. So the second quality is clarity. So of course the fault we need to overcome to have a clear mind is dullness. But I like to add a third quality to this that's normally not mentioned in the meditation text, but I think this is something very important for us in our modern society to be aware of. And that is that when we come into meditation in general, usually we're coming from a very hectic, fast-paced lifestyle. A lot of agitation, a lot of stress, constantly bombarded by stimulus. So we're very agitated normally, very stressed, and our minds are very chaotic. And so in our daily life, whenever we want to focus on anything, what do? We tense. Because we know if we don't tense when we focus, we're going to get distracted. So if we only need to focus for a short time, that tension, that can sort of work. But we know from our own experience, if you focus with tension for a longer time, we become completely exhausted and we often become very agitated. So this is not the approach we want here. So the very first thing we need to do in this practice is we need to learn how to relax. Unfortunately, that's something many of us have forgotten how to do. So there's no way we're going to develop a stable and clear mind with tension. It just won't happen. We're just going to have a lot of problems. In fact, one of the most common problems people have as a beginner in meditation is simply too tight, too tense, trying too hard. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to relax, 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 and then relax more. So we are to develop these qualities in this order. First, we need to emphasize relaxation. Simply relax the body, relax the mind. On the basis of a more relaxed body and mind, then we can work on stabilizing the mind. And then with a more stable mind, we can work on making our mind more clear, focusing in a more clear way. So this is the order we need to emphasize these qualities in. So tomorrow morning, when we're doing the shamatha practice, the thing we're going to work on tomorrow morning before breakfast is simply this. Relax, 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 relax. So what the goal of this practice is to be relaxed and alert. Now, generally, when we're alert, we're super tense. And when we're relaxed, we're half asleep. So what we're trying to achieve here is to be relaxed and alert together. That's the goal. So we start by relaxing. Then we can work on stability and clarity. Any questions? The one other thing I want to mention about this practice this evening is object. So in this practice, what we're doing is focusing on a single object, improving our attention skills. But the question is, of course, what object should we focus on in this practice? And the general recommendation here is use the object that works best for you. And then in the meditation text you get quite a long list of possibilities, of different things you can focus on. And in that list, often in the meditation text it says something like, If you're the sort of person who is highly discursive, meaning always thinking, then definitely the best object for you is the breath. And I think that accounts for about 95% of the modern day population. We're all living in the head. We're always thinking. So much so that we've lost touch with the physical reality. We've even lost touch with our own body. So by focusing on the physical sensations of the breath, it gets us out of our conceptual mind and into our body. So that's a good start. Most of our conceptual thinking, of course, is about the past and the future. Very rarely are we in the present moment. And according to Buddhism, living in the past and the future is a source of a lot of unhappiness. And so modern studies are coming to the very same conclusion. Living in the past and the future is a source of a lot of unhappiness. The physical sensations of the breath only happen in the present moment. So by focusing on them, we get out of our conceptual mind into the body, and we get out of the past and the future into the present moment. Very good. So we're going to be working with the breath tomorrow morning and also on Thursday morning. On Friday morning. Thursday morning. Friday. Thursday and Friday. Now within the breath, there are at least 3 variations of the breath practice. The first is sometimes called the full body practice, and that's the one we're going to be doing this evening actually. The full body practice simply involves noticing sensations anywhere in the body associated with the breathing. So you may notice sensations in this area, in the stomach, chest, throat, nostril area. Anywhere in the body, just notice any sensations associated with the breathing. Because this is a very diffuse object, this is actually very good for working with relaxation, to relax. The second variation, which we're going to start to look at tomorrow morning, is the abdomen. Is to focus in the area of the abdomen, focus on the sensations of the rising and lowering of the abdomen as you breathe. Again, a fairly large area of focus, not too difficult to focus on. This is particularly useful for stabilizing the mind. And then the third variation is the nostrils, to focus on this tiny little area here at the entrance of the nostrils. Very much smaller area of focus. Because it's a much smaller area of focus, it's very helpful for improving the clarity of our attention. So these are the 3 variations that we're going to work with starting this evening and then tomorrow morning and then the following morning as well. And this is probably the most commonly recommended object in Buddhist practice for shamatha practice. Another object that we're going to be working with in this retreat is the mind. Simply focusing on our own mind as the object. Many people find this very challenging, more difficult than focusing on the breath, because the breath is a physical, tangible object, mind is not, more subtle. But I think this can bring enormous benefits in our modern society. Because, again, in our modern society, we are often tormented by our own mind. We are often the slaves of our mind. Because we're caught up in all of our conceptual thinking. Generally, when something comes up in our mind, a thought, emotion, or memory, we do one of 2 things instinctively. The most common thing we do, of course, is when a thought, emotion, or memory comes up, we identify with it, we follow it. And then, of course, we get caught up and overwhelmed by our stories. The second thing we tend to instinctively do is if the thought, emotional memory is unpleasant and we don't know how to deal with it, what do? Stuff it back down, suppress it. Both following these and suppressing just overwhelms us. Because through suppressing them, what happens, of course, is they often manifest as physical problems. I think a lot of the modern day illnesses are suppressed mental content. And then because they're there and we've suppressed them, we've disowned them basically, what we do is we project that negativity onto the people around us. So we really are the slaves of our mind, often tormented by our own minds, overwhelmed by our minds. And then, of course, what we do to try and deal with that is we fight with our mind, try and suppress and push away these things. But that's just like throwing petrol on the fire. It just makes it worse. So this practice of observing the mind, instead of the slaves of our mind, will become the masters of our mind. Because in this practice, what we're doing is we're simply observing thoughts, emotions and memories as they arise and pass, without grasping onto them, without following them, without suppressing. Every time we can do that, just watch them arise and pass, we're not feeding them, which means the habit of them coming up in the future will get weaker and weaker and weaker. Our mind will naturally become quiet and still. Also, when we develop this habit of simply observing them arise and pass, it means that in future, if some strong mental event were to arise in our mind, we could simply be present with it without it overwhelming us. Because actually, if we look, what is a thought, emotional memory? It's virtually nothing. It has no power in itself. They only have power if we give them power. And we give them power either by identifying and following them or trying to suppress them. Then we give them a lot of power and they harm us. If we simply observe them, they have no power, they can't harm us, they can't do anything to us. So if we do this practice, not only will our mind become naturally more quiet and still, we'll become the masters of our mind instead of the slaves of our mind. So instead of our mind being our worst enemy, it will become our best friend. So these are some of the enormous benefits of this practice, and we're going to be working with that on Friday morning and Saturday morning. One other object we'll briefly be touching on in this retreat is no object. Sometimes this is called awareness of awareness. What we're doing in this practice is basically nothing. And this is why people find it very difficult. Because it's too simple. Because it basically involves doing nothing. We always want to do something. What do I got to do? Tell me what have I got to do? I've got to do something. Whereas this practice is not so much doing, it's being. Being present, simply being aware that we're aware. That's it. That's all we got to do. And that's why people find it extremely difficult. Because we don't know how to be present, simply be aware. Because we always want to do something. But this practice is enormously beneficial. Because if we can simply be without doing, simply just be aware that we're aware, that's it, then what you're going to notice is you're going to notice that your mind, your awareness, is completely still. Completely open and spacious. And if we can develop that in meditation, then in daily life, we can be in that state of stillness, openness, spaciousness, in the midst of all the stuff that's going on in our life. And we can remain in that very quiet, still state and still interact with the world and not get caught up in everything and get overwhelmed. And also, by resting in awareness, what happens is we start to intuit the nature of our mind. And this is Vipassana practice, this is wisdom practice. So this leads us very easily or very well into the wisdom practice as well, this awareness of awareness. So we're going to touch on that practice on Saturday morning. So they're the options that we're going to follow in this retreat. Now, those of you who have done a little bit of Lam Rim study, perhaps you've studied a little bit this practice. Generally in the Lam Rim, when it comes to this practice, it often recommends to focus on a mental image of a Buddha. Not so easy, because for many of us, we don't even really know what a Buddha looks like, and many of us have difficulty with visualization. It's quite complex visualization. So many people find that extremely difficult. But I think that all of these three variations, three options in our modern society, very beneficial. So again, the recommendation is use the object that works best for you. But we'll be touching on those three over the coming days. Any questions about shamatha practice? Because that's all I wanted to mention about it this evening. And I'll be wrapping up now. So any questions about this?
Sorry, when you say mind, you mean feelings?
No.
No. Can you,
Okay. Feelings is a classic example where I mentioned before about terminology and confusion. When you see the word feeling, I mean, normally when we say feelings, we mean emotions, yeah?
Yeah.
When you see the word feeling in Buddhism, it does not mean emotion. The word feeling in Buddhism is a translation of a Sanskrit word Vedana. And that word Vedana is simply experiencing things as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So when you see the word feeling in Buddhism, it means it's the mental factor of experiencing things as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So, of course, in the second practice, when we're observing the mind and any mental events that arise in the mind, which can include thoughts, emotions, feelings, mental images, memories. All of these things arise in our mind, so we observe them. Whatever arises, anything like that. So this is the practice, and I'll explain more about it day after tomorrow when we do the practice. But so feelings as in pleasant and unpleasant experiences, emotions, thoughts, memories, mental images, they're all part of the object that we're observing. All of those things.
Okay, but when you were talking about either suppressing them or being
Caught
with
up.
them too much you were talking about emotions, right? Or did it?
No, everything. I mean, we can get caught up in our thoughts, we can get caught up in our memories, we can get caught up in everything. No? So in this practice, as I mentioned, normally when these things come up, we do one of two things. We either grab it and follow it, or we suppress.
Yeah.
In this practice, we're middle way. We're just observing. Just observe them arising and passing, without getting caught up in them, without trying to suppress them. Just observe. That's it. Observe them arise and pass, arise and pass. That's it. Sounds easy, huh? Well, it's simple, but is it easy? Very simple practice. It's not complicated, is it? Just observe. Not complicated, but it's not easy. But it's not easy, not because it's because it's complicated. It's because we're not used to it. So here we can follow great advice from great Indian master, Buddhist master Shantideva from 8th century. He said, no matter how difficult something seems, everything with practice becomes easy. That's all we've got to do. We just got to practice, and it will become very easy to observe our thoughts and emotions. We just need to train ourselves, and then it'll become very easy.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
when you say observe what comes up, do you mean like if, for example, during the meditation, I have like a memory of something that was painful for me.
Yeah.
So I'm observing it, but I'm also hurting it, and then I'm letting it go. Then it's not observing it.
No.
because if I'm-
See, here's the difference. I'll mention it now, but I was going to mention it later. We're observing memories. But what we do, of course, a memory comes up. What do is we engage with what that memory's about, don't we?
Yeah.
If it's a memory about a painful experience, we get caught up in the painful experience, don't we? In this practice, we are simply observing the memory itself as a memory. When you identify with the memory, you're already engaging in what the memory's about. That's why it hurts you. Memories themselves cannot hurt. They can only hurt if you identify with it and get caught up in what it's about.
What about if the feeling is coming in?
You observe the feeling. But again, what we do is when we have a feeling, we have